The life of an African American living in the early 20th century America was rough. They were treated poorly and not given much respect. If you were black, you were automatically supposed to do whatever you were told and never question the judgment of a white man. If you did, your kids could be kicked out of school or your job taken away. But a group of citizens, mostly women, questioned the fairness of the current arrangement and started up the long debate between the different sections of the government over whether or not they should do something about it. On July 2nd, 1964, they did. President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, which officially made it illegal to discriminate against a white person or against a person based on their gender or race. This was not a fix-all solution, though. Blacks and their white supporters were still treated poorly and abused whenever possible. On February 18, 1965, a radical group of white segregationists attacked and killed an African American, who was an active anti-segregationist named Jimmy Lee Jackson. This set in motion a chain of events signaling a change in America's policy towards blacks. Partly in response to the killing, and partly because of the harsh and unfair treatment blacks still had to put up with, Martin Luther King Jr., with the help of the Southern Christian Leadership Council, planned and set up a demonstrational march from the small city of Selma, Alabama, to the state capital. It was on the beautiful spring morning of March 7th when some 600 protesters started the long-awaited march to Montgomery. But they didn't get very far. Alabama state troopers, armed with nightsticks and tear gas, intercepted them at the Edmund Pettus Bridge just outside Selma. The troopers brutally and mercilessly beat them back into Selma. This day has been marked down in the history books, rightfully so, as Bloody Sunday. When King witnessed the devastation of hundreds of unarmed and peaceful citizens, he was mortified, and he himself led a second march 2 days later. Again, the protesters were blocked at the bridge, but before things got out of hand, King called it off. Martin Luther King took the issue to court, and after a long debate, a judge enlisted the U.S. Army and the National Guard to protect King and his protesters as they attempted the march one last time. On March 17th, President Lyndon B. Johnson gave an address, formally labeled "We Shall Overcome," to the Congress on the matter of civil rights. He hoped to convince them to enact the Voting Rights Act. This would hopefully fill in the gaps that the previous Civil Rights Act did not cover. In his speech, he talked about the need for blacks and whites to be treated as equals. He believed that treating blacks as less than equal made us less than them, maybe even less than human. In closing, he stated, "God will not favor everything that we do. It is rather our duty to divine His will. But I cannot help but believe that He truly understands, and that He really favors the undertaking that we begin here tonight." Congress finally conceded, and on August 6, 1965, Johnson signed the legislation for the Voting Rights Act. From March 21st to the 25th, almost 2,000 protesters, both black and white, marched through Alabama. They spent their nights in fields and their days walking. When they did finally reach the steps of the Capitol building, Martin Luther King pronounced to a crowd of over 20,000 supporters, "The end we seek is a society at peace with itself, a society that can live with its conscience. And that will be a day not of the white man, not of the black man. That will be the day of man as man." That day, almost 60 years ago, was not the end of the oppression, but it was a start, and a large step towards making rights equal for all.